Well, welcome to Inside Chat. And this week I have a very special guest. This is former Formula One racing driver, commentator, presenter, and F1 analyst. It's Karun Chandok, everybody. So,
Hello.
hi, thank you for joining us today, Karun. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Very happy to be here and chat about, well, all things F2, I guess.
Yeah, we'll cover a few bases if that's okay, because obviously you've had quite a vast
Sure.
and interesting career. So we'll try and just sort of get into it a little bit on our first meeting. And again, thank you so much for joining us. So we do have quite a lot of new followers to Formula 2. And for those who might, sort of see you on Sky Sports F1 and see you commentating and being the analyst, just take those people through your earlier career, your actual motor racing career.
Well, I started racing out in India, but only for a year when I was 16, and then raced in Asia for a season before coming here to the UK. I came here to race in Formula 3 back in 2002, and then I've raced in all sorts, really. So, Formula 3, did a bit of A1 GP back in 2005 when I first started out. Then went back to Asia for a season in the Renault V6 series before going up to do GP2 for 3 years, and then up to F1. And so you're sort of, I think a driver's career is sort of broken into three parts really. There's the path to F1, there's the time in F1, and there's the path after F1, which in my case, was to Le Mans and to sports car racing, and then Formula E, and a variety of historic racing as well on the side for a bit of fun. And so yeah, it's been a fun and interesting 20 years of competing and in all sorts of places and all sorts of cars, which has been fun.
Yeah, regarding your GP2 days, you did manage to get a few podiums there. You got a first place. So take us back to that. Take us back to your GP2 days.
They were really interesting times, very intense because you're all young drivers fighting to fulfill your life's ambition of racing in Formula One, and you're tantalizingly close when you're in GP2 or Formula Two because you're in the same circuit. You're at the just outside the paddock. You're kind of looking over the fence, trying to get yourself noticed and get yourself into the Formula One world. And um, so yeah, the competition level is very high. It's very intense. The cars are good, powerful, fast cars to drive. The teams are of a very high quality as well as the drivers. So I really enjoyed my time there. I raced against some very, very good drivers, some of whom became good friends of mine, and we were very much a traveling circus. We'd all head down to sort of Luton Airport and jump on the same EasyJet flights. And in those days, all of the testing was done at Paul Ricard pretty much. I think we did a couple of days in Barcelona and Jerez, but most of it was done at Ricard. So we all kind of got used to that routine of being in GP2 mode. And I really enjoyed my time. I learned a lot. I think, as a category that races on the F1 weekends, you learn an awful lot in terms of how the track evolves over the weekend, in terms of your racecraft, in terms of working with the engineers to make sure that you get the car dialed in a very short space of time. In GP2 or F2, there's one practice, one qualifying, and away you go racing. So there's really not a lot of time to muck about, and therefore I think you learn a lot as a young driver. So I really enjoyed my time in the category. As you mentioned, I got podiums. I won a couple of races. I had some good battles with very good drivers that I enjoyed racing with, and I think on the whole, not obviously you have bad memories of races that didn't go well, and every driver's got those, but on the whole, I have to say I think it was a fantastic 3 year period I had there.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of could have beens, coulda, woulda, shouldas in there, isn't there?
Yeah, always is. I mean, the one that hurts the most it was Monaco 2009, where I was leading the race, and the drive shaft broke with 8 laps to go. It was just one of those things. We were a new team that year with Ocean Racing Technology, and it's one of those things. They changed the drive shaft on one side of the car, and unfortunately, when you change drive shafts, you need to make sure you do both. And as a new team, they just didn't have the experience, and that was an error. But yeah, it cost me a win in Monaco, which obviously was something that was very painful. And I drank a lot of tequila that night to feel better.
Yeah, I don't think it's done your overall career any harm by any means, but gutting, because Monaco is my favorite race on the calendar, just for aesthetic purposes, I think. So I think my memories are always of the race winners, and yeah, for sure. I'm sorry you missed out on that one, Karun.
Yeah, I mean, it's what is it now? 12 years later, it still hurts.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Yeah, exactly.
So you did manage to get, you mentioned about testing and a test with Red Bull in Formula One, Red Bull Formula One in Barcelona. And you've also got you started to have links with Force India as well, before getting your break into F1. So, how did that sort of little adventure come about?
Well, I was a part of the Red Bull program. I mean, Red Bull are the reason I got to GP2, to be honest. At the end of 2006, I had no budget. I was pretty much, out of money to go racing. And I was very fortunate that I got picked up by the Red Bull Junior Driver Program, and they funded my, big chunk of my GP2 career. And really, without them, I would have stopped at the end of 2006. So, and then in 2007, I had a bit of a shaky start of the season, with Durango, with a team who had finished last in the championship the year before. So it took a little while for us to start to regroup and rebuild. But in the second half of the season, we scored points on every race weekend, and we started to put together some nice results. And again, I should have actually won in Turkey. I think I got taken out by Nakajima with a few laps to go there. We started to put together some good, consistent results. And then finally I won at Spa, which was quite important, because actually it was a weekend where Dietrich Mateschitz, the big boss of Red Bull, was there. And I met him in Bernie's motorhome after the race, and that was really nice. And so, yeah, I think Helmut Marko and Christian had seen that I had a decent second half of the season in 2007. And they called my dad up and said they'd like to give me an opportunity to test the F1 car at the end of the year and to do some work in their simulator. So it was very cool. And certainly, I think being a Red Bull driver, and there are three of them now in Formula 2, of course, but being a Red Bull driver in GP2 is massively important, because it draws a lot of attention to what you're doing. There's a very real, realistic chance that you are going to be in Formula One if you do well and you do a good job and you play your cards right. So it comes with a lot of pressure, of course, but I think being a part of the Red Bull program and therefore getting a test was fantastic for me.
Yeah, that kind of leads on really to a question I was going to sort of ask you a bit later on, but I'll approach it now, and it is regarding funding within Formula 2, a little bit of insight into that and beyond, and the increasing costs for the young drivers, and there are these programs that exist, like the Red Bull programs, but what can be done to help promising drivers all over the world who need to get cash, who need to fund themselves?
It's very difficult. I had to, obviously coming from a country like India where it wasn't a hugely popular sport and still isn't, we had to work very hard to publicize the fact that I was racing and competing and on this path to F1 and try and sell that dream to sponsors and go out and raise the funding. That was, to be honest, the most difficult and stressful part of the job. And I heavily had to rely on commercial backing. My family had the ability to support me, but only to a certain degree when I was starting out. And beyond that, we really had to rely on companies like Red Bull and a bunch of Indian sponsors to back me. And so it is very difficult. And the costs of racing in the categories just feeding Formula One, i.e. Formula 3 and Formula 2, are very high. You're looking at just under 2 million euros to do a season of F2 and about $1 million to do a season of F3, I think, nowadays, which is huge. It's a huge amount of money. And, I guess I'm not close enough to it in terms of, what it actually costs to run the cars. I guess that's a question for the teams to understand why it costs so high. But so much. But ultimately, that's something that the series promoter and the teams have to work together to find a solution to make it cheaper, if possible. And together with the FIA, if they can. Personally, I think anything that we can do to bring the costs down will be absolutely vital for bringing through the true talent. I'm sure right from karting, if you look at the ladder from karting up to Formula One, the single biggest reason why we don't see good, talented drivers make it all the way is because of financial issues. And I, I don't have the answer. I know you've asked the question, but I don't have the answer as to why it costs so much. Because ultimately, it's up to the teams and the organizers to work out why it costs so much and to try and reduce that.
Yeah, that's definitely a question for my next interview for a team principal or team manager for sure. Yeah, I totally agree with you that that there's talent out there that may very well miss chances, opportunities, and waste that talent because of the affordability, because they can't do it anymore. And that kind of makes me wonder, is there anybody in your opinion that may have missed out, that you've seen as a talent, but may have missed out and have gone elsewhere other than into the higher formulas because of this kind of cash crisis in some instances?
Oh, the list is endless. There's a massive list of drivers. If you look back historically, I think that there's so many drivers who you look at in Formula 4, Formula 3 even, and think, they could have and should have had an opportunity in F2 and maybe in F1, but they just didn't have the money to do it. I met a young guy called Nick Cassidy the weekend, who's racing in Formula E at the moment. Now, Nick was very, very good in when he was racing out in Japan, but he didn't have the budget to do Formula 2, and he didn't have the budget to do FIA Formula 3 properly either. With he got to do Macau and a few bits and pieces, but he's just popped in my head because I saw him 2 days ago. But he's a prime example to me of a driver who deserved a chance, I think, to climb the pyramid. And as I say, he's popped in my head only because I saw him 24 hours ago, but I'm sure there's plenty of others along the way. If we got a pen and paper and spend 10 minutes, you could come up with a list pretty quickly, I imagine.
Yeah, and that's brought me to think about the W series. The girls there are being sort of supported through that, and maybe there's spec there, for that. I don't understand that setup whatsoever and how that's being financed, but perhaps there's a future there as well for not just young women, but young men as well, to be financed throughout their programs.
Yeah, I mean, W Series obviously has a very specific aim, which is to promote young female drivers, and I think that's fantastic what they do. I think Catherine Bonmure and her team, Sean Wadsworth and her team, they do a fantastic job with giving girls that platform to go and compete in single-seater racing, fully funded, which is a very rare opportunity for these young girls, and I hope they make use of it. The next step really is to find a way to create the progression for them, right? The winner the winner of W Series, you want to see her move to FIA F3 and not just compete in FIA F3, but also be competitive and be at the front and winning races and maybe fighting for the championship. And once that happens, I think that'll be a real catalyst to seeing a production line of these girls coming out of the W Series. But I think that's massively important. It's the first step is to get a single-seater series like W Series off the ground to create the opportunity. But now you have to create the progression. And the next progression is to create the steps to FIA F3 and F2. And obviously their ultimate aim is to find a Formula One driver from W Series all the way, which is, you're looking at a 4-year plan after W Series, by the time they do a couple of years of F2 perhaps and 1 year of F3 or something. So it'll be fantastic to see how that unfolds, and good luck to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I think even the Girls on Track Rising Stars program, that obviously kicked off last year, and that's giving opportunities in to start at the Formula 4 level, which again is a great opportunity for young women. And again, maybe a format that can be used for young men as well that perhaps struggle
Well,
with sponsorship.
I met a big group of the Girls on Track participants who were at the Formula E weekend in London last week, and I like the fact that they're encouraging these girls to get interested and involved in motorsport, but not just as a driver. I think this is where it's really important. We recognize that we all look at drivers because they're the stars of the show, but actually, if you look at the involvement of people in the sport, the drivers of Formula One are only 20 people. You've got a traveling circus of, or a working circus, I should say, in F1 of nearly 7,000-8,000 people who work in F1. And if you look at the motorsport industry in the UK, it's about 40,000 people. So actually, what we need to be doing, and that's where I think programs such as Girls on Track do a good job, is to encourage these young girls to participate in motorsport, and not just about being a driver. They can be engineers, they can be lawyers, they can work in the media side, they can work in the commercial side, the marketing. They can be mechanics, they can be data analysts, aerodynamicists. We're very fortunate that in motorsport you could pretty much use any qualification and work in the sport. Really, we have such a unique situation where you blend the technological and sporting and commercial sides of the world into this one fantastic sport. And I think, I would say, of course, everyone dreams of being Lewis Hamilton, right? Everyone dreams of racing and winning the British Grand Prix and winning the World Championship, but not everyone can. And even if you can't follow that path for financial reasons or whatever other reasons stop you, I don't think it should stop you from getting involved in the sport. And I would love to see more women getting involved, really.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. We did a series of interviews of the women of Formula One, the company, a little bit earlier in the year in association with Girls on Track UK, Motorsport UK, which you're a little bit involved with these days, aren't you? And, and that was an insight into females across the board and what their role is at Formula One. And even they gave such a great advice for young men and young women that were watching across the world who have a passion for the sport, who can't necessarily come and work in the UK, but the ideas were there for what you can do in your own country,
Yeah.
and I totally agree. And I've just touched on that. So just let us know a little bit about your Motorsport UK and your involvement with that.
Well, I've joined the main board of the organization. So obviously, the board of directors is the executive management part of the organization. And, in recent times, obviously, David Richards has been heading up Motorsport UK, and with Hugh Chambers, who was the CEO. And both of them have a fantastic history in motorsport at ProDrive, and now they've gone on to the administrative side. And they were kind of looking for a bit of support. The first project I've been involved with is the Formula 4 project, which we're looking at what really the future of Formula 4 in the UK should be, and there'll be some announcements coming out about that in the next few days. We're looking to restructure a few things on that, and really, it's a question of trying to give back to the sport. For me, I've been lucky to have enjoyed 21 years in the sport, and have gained a breadth of experience, whether as a driver or from the television side, or from helping to run the Indian Grand Prix, or helping to work with Bernie on the TV rights. And I've had a fantastic opportunity to look at the sport from a variety of angles, and this is my chance to try and put some of my own thoughts and ideas into shaping the future of the sport. There's lots of things I'd like to do. I'd like to make karting cheaper for kids. I find it frankly bonkers that children are spending £150,000 to go a season of British karting these days at the highest level, which just seems absolutely mad to me. So, there's lots of things, but, Rome wasn't built in a day, and you can't just go in there and run wild and start chucking all your ideas out there. You have to work within the system. You have to work within the system of the FIA, of course, because at the end of the day, they're the world's governing body. And but I'm very optimistic that the team that David and Hugh are putting together will mean that Motorsport UK will be much more actively involved in the future of the sport, and not just somebody that people think of once a year when they have to renew their licenses, because that's frankly what happens nowadays. Teams and drivers think of Motorsport UK once a year in January, and they go, "Oh, I need to do my license," and after that, they don't remember them for the next year. So, I think, hopefully, we will start to see some changes in that.
Yeah, I kind of foresee, we were talking about the abundance of drivers coming through. Now the feeder series, now they have that wonderful structure in place, from F4, F3, F2 up to F1. But what happens to this wealth of talent? Not, finances to one side. You could have a season where you don't just have 3 great, fantastic drivers coming out of Formula 2. You could have, 10 or 12. And what would happen to those? Where would they go? They can't all step up into Formula 1.
No, but this is where there's so many opportunities outside Formula 1, right? Formula 1 is the best of the best go to Formula 1. And I don't think it's right that 10 or 12 drivers go from F2 every year anyway, personally, because that means 10 or 12 from F1 have to come out. It would be nice to have another 3 or 4 cars on the grid, or 3 or 4 teams on the grid, but we don't have that in F1. So as long as that's the case, you'll get 1 or 2 from F2 who go, which is fine. And it means that the rest of them have the opportunity to go to race in sports cars at Le Mans, or in Formula E, or in GT racing, or in IndyCar in America. We've seen a lot of young drivers going there. There's touring cars. There's so many opportunities outside of Formula 1. Of course, don't get me wrong. Every driver's ambition is, of course, to race in Formula 1 and to be successful in F1. But it's always been the case that there's more drivers trying to get in that there are seats available, and that's nothing new. What is new is that there are less seats available on the whole, and that's been the case in the last since 2012, I guess. So yeah, on the whole, I think it's important for young drivers in Formula 2 to recognize that there is a life and there is a world outside of F1. And we've seen them, haven't we? We've seen them go off to Japan and make careers out there racing Super GT and things like that. And they earn a very decent living out of it and make very good careers out of themselves.
So from your GP2 days, how have you seen Formula 2 change over the years?
It's changed in some ways, and it hasn't changed in others, to be honest. I think a lot of the teams have obviously changed ownership and changed hands, but actually when you look beyond the names, you still look up around the pit lane. I recognize most engineers and mechanics and people who are running the teams, which is nice. And I think the biggest change that came is the switch to Pirelli tires. That fundamentally changed the way that the drivers go racing. To be fair, that's the same in Formula 1 as it is in F2. When I raced in it, we were still on Bridgestones, and that was a very different type of racing, a very different tire. And in some ways, people at home might be wondering, it's the black and round, how different can it be? But actually, it has fundamentally changed the way that these guys go about their entire weekend, and the way the format works, and the way they use their tires, and they structure their weekend, and they plan their strategies. It's all fundamentally changed since they switched from Bridgestones to Pirelli. So, and obviously this year there's a whole new format in F2 as well, with 3 races, and that's quite an intense weekend. Just talking to some of the engineers and drivers, it's a mentally very taxing weekend for everyone, just trying to get 3 races into 2 days. So it has changed a lot, but I think what's nice is you still see the good drivers coming through to race in Formula One. You know, where George and Lando coming through a few years ago. I think you got Mick come through recently. At the moment, you know, there's very good quality drivers. I think Yuri Vips and you know, Liam Lawson. You've got you know, Schwartzman. You've got some great drivers, Jehan, of course. So
and Piastri as well. Piastri,
Piastri with Alpine. Lundgaard, I think, has been testing the Indy car this week, so he could be
and
heading off there.
Look how well he did in the, you know, in practice the other week.
Yeah, so you know, I think there's good depth of talent at the moment in F2, and I won't be surprised to see one or two of them in F1 soon. And so yeah, as I said, that in some ways it's very much the same. In other ways, it is quite different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talking about Formula 2 champions, in very, very recently, you have had a day with Mick Schumacher in his father's first Formula 1 car. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, it was a great day. You know, at the start of the year, we were thinking about what we can do to celebrate 30 years of Michael's debut in Formula One, which was, you know, when you look back at it, was such a huge day for F1 really in the history of the sport. You know, this is a guy who raised the benchmark in so many ways in Formula One, and through a long process of networking and digging and trying to work out a schedule and a date. You know, I managed to basically find a person who had one of Michael's cars from that first weekend at Spa that he drove in free practice, and managed to get a date with Mick in the diary, and we had a fantastic day out. And I don't want to give too much away because you'll see the film over the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, which of course coincides with Michael's debut at the end of August. But it was a great day. You know, Mick is he's a lovely young guy, very, very down to earth, and I think he really enjoyed his day. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what the film looks like at the end.
Yeah, you're not the only one. I think quite a lot of people are looking forward to that. But that was an extraordinary season for that car and Gary Anderson, you know, that first year in 91. So I'm sure that will bring some amazing memories back to those that are watching.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, for me, it was I thought it would be really nice to get some of the people who were there when Michael first drove the car to come and speak to Mick, and he didn't know them. So you know, I managed to rope in Gary Anderson, Trevor Foster, who was Michael's engineer, Andy Stevenson, who was the mechanic on the car, as well as Ian Phillips, who was, you know, Eddie Jordan's right-hand man at the time. EJ unfortunately couldn't make it on the day, which was a shame. But yeah, it was a great day of storytelling, and I think Mick enjoyed hearing stories of his dad's first foray into F1.
So back to yourself, you know, you have been commentating, presenting for a number of years, and you're now the go-to Sky analysis there. So we've talked about your racing career, but do you have any favorite moments of your presenting career?
Oh, wow. I think, you know, it's hard to pick one. I think, I don't know, really. You've caught me off guard. Most people ask me about favorite moments of my driving career. No, listen. I think I'm very lucky to have. I've now worked with 5 different broadcasters in F1, and I've got great memories with each of them. I guess if I had to pick one straight off the top of my head, it'll be talking to Jos Verstappen when Max won his first ever race. You know, that was just an amazing weekend, Barcelona 2016, when the two Mercedes hit each other on the opening lap, and then Max, amazingly, his first ever weekend in a Red Bull, won the race. You know, it's the stuff that fairy tales are made of. And I remember straight after the race, I walked into the pit lane. I was working at Channel 4 at the time, and I saw Jos, and he was next to me, and we talked to each other. And Jos, for anyone who knows him, he's a hard man. He's hard as nails. But he was in tears, and it was so nice to see him and to speak with him. And he's standing on the podium, and his boys up there. And you know, Jos was a fantastic racing driver who got podiums in F1 but never won a race. And so for him to see his son win for the first time, first weekend in a Red Bull, And I'm pretty sure I was the first person to interview him as we were walking from the garage to the podium. Was pretty special.
Yeah, it absolutely was. As somebody watching and as a fan, it was an extraordinary weekend. And for such a young man to come along, and and what at the time he hadn't even had his normal road driving license, I think, which was or that was just previously. But that year was extraordinary for him to not even be able to drive on the road and suddenly find himself in a Formula One car, on these racing tracks. And that has changed. The age limit has changed now, hasn't it? So I'm not sure that would happen again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's changed. Every once in a while you get these drivers who come along who are they're once in a generation talents. Michael, Lewis, Fernando. You could go back over time, of course, but Max is unquestionably one of those.
So I've asked you about your favorite moments, but you've managed to get yourself a drive and a ride in lots of different cars as well for segments of TV shows. And do you have a favorite car that you've driven that wasn't one of your race cars?
Yeah, I'd have to say it was Nigel Mansell's Williams FW14B, the car that won the '92 World Championship. Anyone who grew up in the '80s and '90s like me, you think of Formula One, you think of either Senna and the McLaren or Prost and the McLaren, or you think of Mansell Red 5 at Silverstone, the crowd invading. It's such an iconic part of history in F1, I think. And I got to drive. I've driven it now on several occasions, but I'd say perhaps the most special was I drove it on the weekend of the British Grand Prix on Sunday morning, Grand Prix Sunday, the crowd pouring in, and they let me go out and do a few demo laps in front of the crowd on Sunday morning, and that was it was pretty special, really.
Amazing, absolutely. So what's next for you, Karun? What is next for Karun Chandok?
Well, I wear lots of different hats these days. Obviously, with Sky, I go to most of the Grand Prix, so that takes up quite a chunk of time. I'll go to 17 or 18 races normally in every year. I'm filming for the new season of Fifth Gear with Jason Plato and Vicky Butler-Henderson and Rory Reid, we've just started filming that. So that takes up time between the races. I'm designing racetracks with a company called Driven International. So we've just done the redesign of Abu Dhabi, for example. We're doing one we got a track in Africa. We got a track in Hawaii, one in Canada at the moment. We've got two in the Middle East. So it's quite a lot of work going on with that. Doing stuff, of course, with Motorsport UK, which takes up a chunk of time and is interesting and fun to do. Working with a motorsport experience company called DTO for people who want to come and do fun days on track and some great pro cars, Porsches and McLarens and things like that. And, I'm helping them do their days and put together their program. So lots of different hats professionally, and then trying to juggle time at home and have a bit of family time in between is always a little bit of a challenge. So no, I can't complain about life being dull at the moment.
Amazing, absolutely. Well, I think I have to say for myself and on behalf of everybody else that's a Formula 2 fan, you're very probably one of the most successful graduates that GP2 and Formula 2 have seen, not only because you achieved a Formula 1 dream, but you have gone on to use your years of knowledge and expertise, and you're still giving to the sport, which I think is very commendable. And I for sure enjoy watching you, and I'm sure everybody else does. So thank you so much, Karun, for joining Inside Chat. We very much appreciate you.
Thank you very much. No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.